You can't start talking about electric rates and the new things that we want to do without reviewing just a little bit of history. And the history starts really with old meters like this. Hopefully there's not any more in town that look just like this. They're supposedly all converted. But for many, many years, and for nearly 100 years in the electric utility industry, the only data that electric utilities got back from customers was the 5 readings that those 5 numerals that we got once a month. So every 30 days you got 5 digits. And that relationship between customers and very limited data that we got back had to result in us having really simple rates. I mean, there's not that much you can do to pay for all of the generation plants that TVA has, all the transmission lines, substations, and then the local distribution system, all the stuff that it takes to make an electric system work, paid for with just reading 5 digits per month, results in a simple relationship between customers and the utility that just has manifested itself in the past as a rate that's just so many cents per kilowatt hour, and that's it, without any kind of a time differentiated readout on when people are using energy. That relationship in Glasgow, and this is not just Glasgow, you could look at 10,000 cities across the United States and find a similar graphic to the one I'm showing you up here. And this is a graphic with 1 year of data on it. That means there's 365 lines, 24 hours in the day compared to the total kW demand in Glasgow. So I'm using this because it really helps you see what a bizarre way we use electricity and how misshapen the daily load shape is. So these colored lines represent, and you'll hear me use the word peak a lot, these colored lines represent the 12 months of the year and the 1 day each month that had the 1 hour during the day when the community used the most power. So it's the peak for the month. And so every month has a peak, and every peak is made up of components. You know, if you're going to start at 0 and add up all the load to get to a peak, and I'm kind of pointing at the highest peak for that year that I'm showing you, this axis is actually made up of 7,200 plus points, because there's 7,200 meters in town. So you add together the contribution by each meter to get the peak. And so everybody, and when we say coincident peak, we're talking about measuring what people contributed, measuring each person's or each customer's contribution to that peak each month. We had one this morning. Most likely this morning at 9 o'clock was the hour during November when all of us together combined to produce the highest reading for the month of November, and that is what will make about 50% of the bill we pay to TVA is based on that reading. So that may be over somewhere in the $1 million range because of the 7,200 of us working together to produce this morning's peak. Now it was around 9 o'clock, so it was one of these colors over here. These are winter months. The community usually peaks around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning on a weekday in the winter. And in the summer, it's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. And those are pretty predictable. In fact, they're so predictable that for the last 3 years, we have been trying at the Glasgow EPB to predict when those peaks were going to happen. And we've looked at the historical use of energy in our community, and we look at the weather, and we, do a little bit of soul searching and try to figure out when this peak is going to happen. And then we're going out on all the different media that we have access to, Facebook and Twitter and blogs and emails and web pages, TV, Weather Channel, Channel 6, everything that we've got, we've been practicing telling the community, hey, looks like tomorrow we're going to set a peak. If you want to reduce our power bill, try to cut back during these 2 or 3 hours. And to a large extent, people have responded. But not enough of an extent that we could just rest on our laurels and think we didn't need to do anything but just ask people to respond. Actually, to get the right kind of response, you need a rate, and that's the main thing we're here tonight to talk about. Why is this a problem? Why is this load shape a problem? Well, I'll tell you. The problem is that the load looks like this big mountain, and the resources that somebody like TVA uses to provide the energy to go to all those customers actually comes in, for want of a better word, they come in rectangles. And you drive by a big coal-fired plant or drive by a nuclear plant, whatever you see from the road, you see a lot of smokestacks. The output from those plants is pretty much fixed. It can't vary, follow the load like I have described for Glasgow. So you've got these fixed assets, but you've got this bizarre shaped load. So the only way a company like TVA can make the power to serve a community like Glasgow with a load shape like that is to keep on stacking up assets. You keep building more plants. You start some of them at one time of day, you stop them at another time of day, and you just have to keep stacking them up until you have enough assets to cover Glasgow plus the other 154 customers that TVA has. Well, that is the real problem. That's what we would like to fix, because for 100 years, electric utilities have responded to that bizarre load shape by building more and more assets. And while those look like simple rectangles, no big deal, those rectangles represent unbelievably expensive assets. Those bottom ones that get to run all the time, those are most normally nuclear plants. TVA is about to add the first new nuclear unit in the United States since, certainly since the Fukushima disaster, but really since 3 Mile Island. And those come at an extremely large price tag, $7-8 billion for one of those rectangles. So what we would like when we think about Glasgow's future, we think about our kids and our grandkids having to pay for those rectangles. You'd like to figure out a way to keep TVA from building any more of those plants. We'd like to figure out how to live within the assets that are already on the ground and are already getting their debt serviced instead of having to build new ones. So how would you do that? Well, what I'm saying is you really need a load shape more like this, where you've got more energy used off-peak at night and less energy used on-peak. Because if you got a different load shape like that, TVA can serve it with a lot fewer rectangles. So you have a lot less debt service for our kids and grandkids to pay, because when they borrow the money to build one of these plants, they're going to finance it for 40 or 50 years. So that debt service is going to be out there for a long time. It's a big deal when we let them start one of those plants, because it's not going to go away soon. So we want to put in a rate, and we want all of our neighbors to follow us and put in a rate that incents everyone to reshape their demand and develop the load shape into something that's more sustainable than the system we have today. Here's what we have learned in our study of customers here in Glasgow, and that is that there's a dramatic, these people happen to live right next door to each other. And here's one customer who, this was not from this morning, this is from last winter, but this was a winter day with a 9 o'clock peak, just like we had this morning. And this customer, you can see, responded to our plea to cut back during the peak. So they perhaps pre-warmed their house during the night. They laid down or lowered their thermostat a few degrees during the peak hours, and then they recovered later on. This represents a customer that is inexpensive to serve, that is reshaping the total demand. Meanwhile, next door, this is a customer that's more generic. We find there's more of these customers in Glasgow than there is these customers so far. And this is a customer that perhaps stayed in bed until it felt like it was warm enough to get up, and when they got up, they perhaps threw a load of clothes in the dryer and turned the range on and turned the heat way up, and you get this giant contribution to peak. This is coincident peak demand. This customer was putting 9 kW on the system during the peak, so they contributed 9 kW to the city's peak. That's their coincident peak demand. What they were doing at the same time the city peaked. Now we pay wholesale rates to TVA. Glasgow Electric Plant Board doesn't make energy. We buy it from TVA at wholesale, and then we sell it to everyone at retail. So the wholesale price of a kW of demand on peak is about $10. So, just serving this customer this one day cost the Electric Plant Board $90 because that's what their coincident peak demand was. Their total bill for the month was about $110. So it's not hard to see that we lost a fortune serving that customer because of the way they use energy. And the rate is designed to help people that want to improve their efficiency save money, and let people that don't, so far, want to improve their efficiency pay their way instead of having somebody else pay their way. It's really as complicated as this rate gets. So how could you actually, like a lot of people did this morning, how could you reduce your coincident peak demand? First, recognizing the hours. Listen when we say through all these different media outlets when a peak is likely to occur. Also remember, we're not perfect. We're doing the best job, and as far as we know, we're the only utility that's sticking their neck out and trying to predict when a peak is going to occur. And we've gotten fairly good at it, but we're not batting 1,000. We may be batting 750, something like that. Then you can make plans. If we predicted a day in advance, make plans to reduce your consumption during those hours. Not complicated. You can also implement some technology if you don't want to actually reach out yourself and change your thermostat setting, or if you don't want to, like I did this morning, trip my water heater off, which I need to remember to trip it back on when I get back home. There are technologies that we're experimenting with. Thermostats that we can address, water heaters that we can address. We're even putting in battery systems. We're doing the biggest battery deployment in the United States on a rural system right now. And then you can use this free portal we've created. We didn't buy it. We have smart people that went to Glasgow High School and Barron County High School, and they're on our team, and they have been able to create this unbelievable portal where you can go in at any time of the day from wherever you are and see what your house is doing and how much energy you're using and what your contribution to peak is. Using those tools, we've proven, the people in this community have proven, you can reduce your coincident peak demand. Okay, the meat of this discussion is supposed to be about rates. And so to try to explain exactly how the new rate differs from the old rate, I've tried to use this simple graphic right here. The far left represents the 10 cents a kilowatt hour that we charge for electricity, and the three components that go in that 10 cents. So the first component is really simple. The blue represents what TVA charges us for a kilowatt hour. So that obviously has to be the main part of what we charge for a kilowatt hour, the wholesale cost. The red part is what TVA charges us for that peak kW demand. Now, in the past, when Glasgow and every other utility in the country tried to add all the costs up to develop a simple retail rate, we had to make some assumption of what different customers are going to contribute to peak. Now, you saw that graphic right before this, how widely varied that contribution can be. It can be zero, it can be off the charts. And since we, in the past, didn't have metering capable of measuring what everyone's contribution is, we figured out an average. some number that ought to be in the ballpark, and we add that to the kilowatt hour charge. So the red represents a guess at what you're going to use on peak and a guess of how many kilowatt hours you're going to use, because you have to know that to do the math to come up with the dollars to pay for everyone's peak demand. Finally, the green piece is our fixed costs, what it costs to have in Glasgow substations, distribution system, tree trimming, personnel, bucket trucks, billing systems, all the stuff that it takes to deliver the grid that we all count on and to replace it when it falls down. That is what we call our fixed cost, and so that represents a couple of cents per kilowatt hour. So all those together, that produces the rate schedule everyone has been used to, just cents per kilowatt hour. The only thing we're changing is we're breaking this down into pieces that are known instead of these guesses over here. The new rate will still have a kilowatt hour charge. That kilowatt hour charge is going to be equal to the wholesale cost. By that I mean whatever TVA charges us, and as it changes over the years, that's what we're going to charge our customers. No markup. Sales right through, whatever they charge. And in the future, if it's TVA plus somebody making solar power or wind power that they want to sell, we'll pass that straight through as well. No markup. And those days are probably closer than any of us would have ever thought we'd see to the cost of alternative generation being viable. The second charge on a new bill that people will be getting after January the 1st will be the exact contribution to peak that each customer does. Coincident peak demand. When the city is at the highest for the month, that's when TVA charges us, and that's what we'll pass along at the exact rate that TVA charges us. No markup. And finally, the last component is the fixed costs. I mean, the grid has value, and we have to collect enough money to keep the grid operating. We have a lot of debt service for the way we finance the grid, and we have personnel costs, and we have depreciation, and all of those things require us to collect money. We're going to collect that in what we wanted to be one fixed charge on the bill, but our rates are actually regulated by TVA, and in the process of getting them to approve our rates, they forced us to split it into two charges, so customers will see this. The new bill will have all these components. It'll look a lot like this. Now, this is from that portal that I told you about, that folks like Josh, who's standing right over there, started with a clean sheet of paper and wrote the code to deliver everything that's on that portal. And one of the things that's on that portal, and this has been there for months, is the ability to go to the portal and compare your current bill to what your bill would be under the new rates for the same consumption. I did this early this month, so this is my October bill. And it shows that the old bill had an $11 customer charge, about $109 worth of energy, so I had a $120 bill for October. Had the new rates been in effect, I would have gotten a bill for $28 worth of customer charge, about 280 on-peak kilowatt hours at $16, 843 off-peak kilowatt hours at $49. I was lucky to have listened when we predicted a peak on October the 8th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and got my house down to 370 watts. So that only cost me $4. And then the delivery charge of $14 for a grand total of $111, actually $9 cheaper than the existing rate that we're on now. I know you all have heard, and we've heard a lot from people that believe this rate change is a rate increase. It is not a rate increase unless you don't use energy in any kind of a fashion that recognizes when peak is. There are plenty of people whose bill will be higher if they choose not to react to the signals. There are plenty of people whose bill will be lower because they will react to the signals and have been proving they could react for the last 30 months when we've been doing this. So the number one way to save money on your bill is to keep that coincident demand charge low by responding when we predict a peak. What have we been doing to get the word out? I mean, I think, and TVA, our regulator, thinks, and I know you all think, that the number one problem we have with this rate is getting people educated. We've been hammering away on that. Again, for 30 months, we have been trying to get the word out when we predict a peak, 30 consecutive months. That means that the board that you appoint, that I work for, has had to endure 30 consecutive months of me reporting on how the rates work, what we're learning, why the existing rates do a poor job of actually delivering true costs to customers. So they've been long suffering on this. Then we've been using all this media the same way to talk about the actual rate that we have approved or that we have applied to implement for a full year. Just about every day, something about it in some media, Facebook, Twitter, our blog, emails that we send directly to every customer that will give us an email address, and on and on. We created the portal that I've talked about. That's been available for multiple years. If you ever watch TV, we're going to launch on Channel 2 the first Infotricity energy channel in the United States, as far as we know. 24 hours a day, information about the electric rates, work that we've done on homes to improve their efficiency, kind of a local This Old House program, on and on, to keep on hammering away at educating our community about living under this new electric rate environment. Finally, it's you're probably sick of getting them, but we say something just about every day on some social media about the rates, about peaks, about how people can actually save money under the new rate. And how might all of these things benefit our community? Well, already the innovative nature of this rate structure and the existence of our broadband network and the other ideas that we have had have attracted over $8 million, real, not conceptual dollars, real dollars that funding agencies have sent to Glasgow to help support our research on what electric utilities should look like in the future. Right now, we are in the process of upgrading over 500 Glasgow homes with that money, with different levels of technology to help them live better under this rate structure and prove that they can reduce their coincident peak demand. So we're not just putting the rate in place and telling you, there it is, good luck to you. We're also going out and pulling this grant money out of agencies to bring to Glasgow to spend on Glasgow homes. That's being done right now. There's another economic impact. If we use this rate and convince our customers to each reduce their coincident peak by a little bit, say 1.5 kW per month, which is basically a hairdryer. If we could get everybody to reduce their demand that much, that would equal over $2 million a year that would stay in our local economy, get spent at our local restaurants and shoe stores and what have you, that won't be going to TVA. That rate should produce that benefit, which will be a direct injection into our local economy. Industrial customers. The bigger customers are normally better suited to react to this kind of a rate. They normally have the technology. Lots of new school and government buildings have what we call energy management systems, where they can program the building to react to these rate structures. Big manufacturers can decide what time of day they're going to run a line or what time of day they're going to make widgets to try to avoid the peak demand. So they are at least enabled to save a lot of money, and we expect that when our industry finds it less expensive to operate in Glasgow compared to their other communities, that more jobs and more expansion will come to Glasgow. I can't guarantee that, but it's really hard to argue with that economic logic. We hope that other communities will adopt this rate system that we're putting in place. We're getting tons of interest. One of the biggest problems we've got these days is trying to schedule all the different utilities that want to come talk to us about what we're doing, and also meet our objectives of serving our customers. So it's kind of a ballet we're doing, trying to answer their questions and convince them to mimic this rate, and also accomplish all of the goals that we have for our community. The biggest thing about this is that it puts each customer in complete control of what their bill is. You want to save money on your electric bill? Really concentrate on your coincident peak demand. They're worth $10 a piece. So, the savings pile up pretty quickly if you react to those predictions of peak. And more than anything, or one of the things that excites me the most, is that this will transition the Electric Plant Board from being an energy sales utility. I mean, we have always had to hope people bought more kilowatt hours, because the only way we made our daily bread was from the markup on kilowatt hours. But we're talking about moving into a world where that we make our daily bread from a fixed cost recovery, and then we can become everyone's partner at teaching them how to use less. We'll be on the team of trying to keep more money in the community and less going to TVA. So I like to say that we'll be in the energy logistics business instead of the energy sales business. I don't know if that was 20 minutes or not, but that's my pitch. Any questions? Yes, Wayne.
You hinted at commercial rates. They're the same as my home rate?
That's right. We're passing through the wholesale rates to everyone, every class, from from my garage all the way up through the hospital or the biggest customers in town. They will pay the same thing for kilowatt hours that you and I are paying. They'll pay the same coincident peak demand rate.
You mentioned $10.10. Would you briefly explain where the $10 charge is and what the 10-cent charge is?
Well, I mean, when TVA...
You're just talking about a unit of measurement?
Well, there's two different units. A kilowatt hour is a measure of work. It's like in your car, the odometer is measuring how far you went. That's what kilowatt hours are. Whereas your speedometer is measuring how fast you're going. That's what a kW demand is. So for each kW that you're using at your house on peak, coincident with the community's peak, TVA charges us $10. So during that 1 hour, if you had 1 kW on, we would sell you 1 kilowatt hour and charge you 10 cents for it. TVA would charge us $10 for it. And therein lies the problematic business relationship that we're trying to fix with this new rate structure.
Hey, Billy, is there a different charge on the customer charge for a business versus a home?
Yes. Again, when we asked TVA to approve our rates, we wanted to base the fixed charge solely on your historic usage, your historic peak demand. They had trouble approving that, saying that no utility had ever done anything like that. Of course, the reason is nobody's had sophisticated enough metering to do it in the past. But now we have 4 different customer charges: residential, small commercial, large commercial, and industrial. And then the second element of that fixed charge is a multiplier times the kilowatt hours. So it's not the pure non-volumetric rate that we applied for. It was all we could get approved by TVA at this point. But we'll be revisiting that as soon as possible, probably within a year, to try again to get that pure non-volumetric rate approved. So right now, yes, the answer to your question is yes.
Okay, the delivery charge. I mean, when I look at it versus a
Yeah.
customer charge, and I think if I'm correct, you said TVA is forcing y'all.
TVA forced us to do it
When I
that
look
way.
at them, I think it's the same thing.
It should be the same thing. Those two numbers ought to be added together and be a fixed charge.
The delivery charge can fluctuate, true?
The delivery charge is based on the number of kilowatt hours that you use, yeah.
What about the surcharge, the increase in that from $11 to $28?
Well, that's what I've been explaining, Councilman. The old rate collected, it used that $11 plus an adder on the kilowatt hours to make a wild guess at what each person should pay on the value of the grid. The new rate abandons the kilowatt hour adder. You know, a lot of people concentrate on, well, this charge is going up from $11 to $28, but they miss the just as important is, instead of you paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour, you're paying 5.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So there's a counterbalance to all those changes.
My concern still is the senior citizen segment and how they will respond. I know you've done a good job with getting the word out and going to have the paper that goes out with the bills. That's
Right.
good, but still the people that do not have computers, the people that don't want to fool with it, folks on fixed incomes, people that are renting. So how are you looking at all of that?
Well, Councilman, that's kind of a sticky wicket. I look at it only mathematically about what it costs to serve each customer without any kind of a social engineering aspect of trying to charge some people less. Because remember, anybody that we say, well, they're elderly, and I kind of take offense at that, it's because I'm part of that community now. But, you know, whether you say that you're low income, fixed income, renting, if those people should not pay the full cost of their service, then we must also find another group and assign them the responsibility of paying extra to support our social goals for the rates. I have not recommended to my board any social reason to change electric rates. I've only done it with mathematics. I think it's above my job description to decide whether there is a social design element of electric rates. Now, what the board that you all have appointed have also decided is that there really shouldn't be a social design. The only way to get pure justice to everyone is for everyone to pay the exact cost of the service they receive.
So it affects people that's at home all day than somebody that goes to work. I mean, because if you're gone, you're not going to use any, but if you're there all day for every day, then you're going to use more than the norm then, probably.
Well, Councilman, to respond, take today, for example. You know, we had a peak demand at 9 o'clock this morning for November. You know, somebody that was home all day was perfectly positioned to alter their usage for a couple of hours and beat that peak. Whereas if somebody went to work and they left their thermostat set on 72 degrees and left, they're actually not as well positioned unless they either implement some technology with a programmable thermostat or remember before they leave to turn their thermostat down some. So we have not found, and remember, we've been doing research on this for 3 years. We have not found any direct correlation between how much money you make, where you live, what age you are, that relates to the efficiency of the way people use energy. What we have found a correlation with is just habit. Because of the old way that we've charged for electricity and it was all averaged out, then people have not been motivated to make many changes, so they just set the thermostat at one point, leave it, whether they're there or not, and that has resulted in that bizarre load shape that is the problem that causes too many new generation facilities to be built.
So if you're planning on leaving the house, it's cold morning, you're planning on leaving at 8 o'clock, How many degrees on your thermostat?
We are using, after a lot of experimentation, a 4-degree offset. So if you normally keep it at 70 in your house and we predict a peak, if you want to mitigate that peak, the best way to do it is to pre-warm the house before the peak by 4 degrees, so go up to 74, and then right before the projected peak, cut it by 4 degrees down to 66. That's what I did at my house this morning, and I think I had a 600-watt contribution to peak at 9 o'clock that I'm very proud of. I'll take that.
But again, Billy, to kind of reiterate that point, if I was in fact, as Councilman Neal described, someone that stays at home throughout the day, your studies have predicted that by lowering my thermostat 4 degrees, I should offset any increase that this new rate.
Well, and combine that with the other intuitive things. Don't throw clothes in the dryer.
Sure.
Don't, turn the dishwasher on. Don't turn the range on. Those are all the big users of electric energy. So my point is somebody, because I've heard that a lot, well, I'm retired, I stay home all the time, there's nothing I can do. Actually, nothing could be more incorrect. You're in the best position to do something because you're there. You don't have to buy any technology. You just listen, or don't even listen to us. If it's the coldest day of the month, it's going to be a peak. If it's the hottest day of the month, there's going to be a peak. And so, try to modulate your usage. If it's a summertime, lay off of it in the afternoon. If it's the wintertime, lay off of it in the morning. And that's all you need to save money. It doesn't require internet. It doesn't require being some kind of energy guru. Just really simple stuff.
But again, we're not talking turning a thermostat from 70 to 50.
No.
In order to, so even though I'm going to be home, I shouldn't freeze to death.
No.
It's going to be
4
cool.
degrees is within the range, those of us who've had kids over the years, it's within the range of what your house varies anyway because they leave the door open all the time. So it's not a life and death matter, a 4-degree swing, but it's a real money saver, and that 4 degrees can, over time, reduce the need to build new generation that will save money for forever, just to endure those simple little modifications in our lifestyle.
Ray, you got all this information. How many customers right now are good customers and how many are bad customers?
All of our customers are good.
I know they pay their bill, but I mean, how many fit the mold you had out there?
When we've done it, there's probably, depending on the month, whether you're talking about summer or winter, but just all things averaged out, probably about 35% of our customers have such a poor load factor that we lose money serving them. The rest of them are varying degrees of better than that. Varying degrees of better than that, which means everything from we're breaking even on them on up to the ones that we're really charging too much because they're being asked to subsidize the ones that we're losing money on today.
Is there a parameter that says this works or it isn't working for this community? I mean, is there a fallback plan or is this is it for now on or foreseeable?
Well, I mean, I think every time that my board meets, there's an opportunity to modify what we're doing and change things, but we hope that this architecture, this rate design is one that will live for a long time because it allows us to collect the money that we need to maintain the grid and upgrade the grid. As the weather evolves and storms get worse, we need to invest more money in the grid to keep it at the level of reliability that people expect. And it'll also, since we will be out of the energy sales business and can partner with our customers to help them use less, then we think that rate will continue to promote alternative energy forms. And as the cost of solar and other methods come down, we'll partner with people to implement those methods. So I hope that we have done enough homework that this is a long-term solution.
So there's no such thing as I'm not going to be in the plan, right?
There is not,
Otherwise, you
Councilman.
get you a wood stove and a window fan, right?
Well, you've hit on, curiously enough, some of the greatest utility experts that have come to Glasgow and have endured me going through this presentation for a couple of hours will ask before they leave, now, how many people do you think are going to take advantage of this rate? And it's like, how many different ways do I need to say this? Everybody gets to take advantage of this rate. If you had it optional, only the people that were going to save money would take it, and then that would put us in a fiscal death spiral.
How can we reach the people that don't know the peak time of the day? How can you reach them to know when that's going to be happening? I mean, some people don't have, Facebook or internet or.
We've got, if they have a TV and have our cable system, they're going to have a channel that talks about nothing but that. That's the channel I talked about. We're about to implement a new software system that we're partnering with the water company on, that if people that just want to get a phone call about this, if they'll give us their preference and their phone number, we can enter that into a new system where that it'll just give them an old-fashioned phone call with an automated voice that says, tomorrow at 9 o'clock, you need to lay down. So we are going to use everything short of skywriting to get the message out to people. And I don't think any other utility is as well prepared as we are, because we are in so many media businesses to get that word out. Not to mention the fact that we've so far gotten $8 million to help people adapt their home to where that the home really automatically takes advantage of it.
Billy, I don't want to keep everybody that much longer, but that $8 million you brought back up again, if you would, kind of go into the fact, what that $8 million is actually doing for these homes.
Well, so far, and we have actually other funders that are interested in giving us more, but so far the money is being used to provide Wi-Fi enabled or programmable thermostats so that people don't have to modulate their temperature themselves. If they want us to do it, we can do it for them. We're using water heaters made just up the road in Louisville, GE heat pump water heaters that also can be communicated with through the internet. And so the night before a peak, we tell those water heaters to heat the water up higher than usual, and then we tell the water heaters to lay down and don't reheat it during the peak. Then there's the battery systems. We're implementing extremely sophisticated home battery systems that can charge the batteries at night. When I had that graphic up there showing you how we need more load at night. So the batteries charge up at night, and then they work in concert with the thermostats and the heat pump water heaters to virtually zero out those homes' contribution to peak, because the energy during the peak is coming from the battery system. So that's and of course we've also done some homes that we did extreme energy makeovers on, where we went in and diagnosed everything about their energy usage, what we call the envelope, the way their house works, and their HVAC system. There's, I think, 44 homes in Glasgow that have already gotten complete makeovers using this grant money that came from outside the community and got spent in this community because we had this innovative rate structure that people wanted to study.
What about all the city buildings and things like that, Mayor?
Those are definitely an opportunity. We're about to enter into a performance contracting program that we think will evaluate all the city buildings and see if we can't make upgrades to those. Billy has already given me information that shows that I believe the city will, on all of our properties, our net savings will be a couple of $1,000s
If you
based
do
on the new
nothing.
structure. If we do nothing.
Yeah.
Now, I bet you can walk into the Plaza Theater right now and it's 72 degrees in there, and there won't be another show down there for any number of days. So if we can put programmable thermostats on buildings like that, on this building, then those savings should be even greater. And again, there's no reason in the world for us
Just
not
had
to
a long
do that.
discussion with Judge Hale today about their operation of the jail, and we've been looking at the way, how much they contribute to peak at the jail, and there's some really easy ways for them to just change the time of day that they do their laundry, change the temperature in there a little bit, and they can save tons of money. And it doesn't come out of the electric plant board, it doesn't come out of taxpayers, it actually comes out of TVA. And it's a beautiful way to enrich our economy just by operating more efficiently.